Check, check. Whoa. Check 1 2 1 2. All right, and D. Let's take. Oh no, select. She can come down. Oh no, I'm sorry. We wanted to turn D up a little bit. Oh, that is pretty. How's it going? Check, check. 1 2.
Thank you. Check, 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 check. I think am I good? Check, check. Oh, okay. We're good. You're good? Okay. Never mind. No, it's okay. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Welcome to a meeting of the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and the media, consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. Meeting notice was also posted in the boardroom of the Upper School campus, sent to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Express Times, and the Hunterdon County Democrat, and sent to the clerks of Delaware Township, East Amwell Township, Flemington Borough, Raritan Township, and Reddington Township. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda. I'd like to take a roll call, please. Mrs. Blutfeld? Here. Ms. Duggan? Ms. Gong?
Here.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Here.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Here.
Mrs. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Reimer? And Mrs. Santangelo?
Here.
In the absence of a board president and a board vice president this evening, I'd like to open the floor for nominations to appoint a chair pro tem just for this evening's meeting. So may I have nominations, please?
I nominate Ms. Blutfeld.
Any others? Okay, I'm going to roll call that. Please just call out your... Mrs. Blutfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
And Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
For the evening, Mrs. Blutfeld is going to be our chairman pro tem. Sure.
I'm sorry, Lori.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There you go. Now you have the special one.
Okay, Ms. O'Donnell, would you like to read the district mission statement?
I would love to. Let me get my agenda.
Hunterdon Central is an innovative educational community dedicated to the intellectual, social, and emotional safety and growth of all students. While fostering curiosity and promoting wellness, we aspire to create powerful learning experiences, establish strong partnerships, and serve as contributing members of society.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from September 23rd?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Blackfield,
Yes?
Ms. Gong,
Yes.
Ms. Kellogg,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Santangelo.
Yes.
Oh, yes, motion carries. Thank you.
We have 2 items of correspondence, as noted on the agenda. And I will now turn it over to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Some of us have just returned from the New Jersey School Board's Workshop Convention. I was very happy to be down at the conference with many of you and to share ideas. And I am looking forward to us debriefing and using our learnings to make an even stronger Board of Education and school district. This month, our students and staff have really settled into a rhythm. I have loved going into classes and seeing the hands-on and the minds-on learning that our students are doing. So just on Friday alone, I watched our engineering students create designs for joints for bones that our biomedical sciences students had dissected. I saw our ABLE students host a beautiful art gallery, and I saw our introduction to culinary art students putting their cooking skills to the test by making themselves breakfast. The jury is still out on how they cleaned the pans, though. Those looked a little rough. I did want to make note of some specific accomplishments that we got this past month. I am proud to report that Hunterdon Central was named to the AP School Honor Roll, earning silver distinction. The AP School Honor Roll recognizes schools whose advanced placement programs are delivering results for students while broadening access. Schools can earn this recognition annually based on criteria that reflect a commitment to increasing college-going culture, providing opportunities for students to earn college credit, and maximizing college readiness. So thank you to our AP teachers for all of their hard work in preparing our students for college-level courses. We also had Action for Healthy Kids, and USDA's Food and Nutrition Service announced that Hunterdon Central was one of the school districts nationally that received a Healthy Meals Incentive Recognition Award. Specifically, our district received the Innovation in the Preparation of School Meals Award for the addition of scratch-made menu items and utilizing local produce. So thank you to Pomptonian for their menu selections and preparation that help our district be recognized for this award. Also, congratulations to girls tennis and boys soccer teams who both captured the Hunterdon Warren Sussex County Championships. We wish all of our sports teams good luck as they wrap up the fall season soon. And as we come to the end of October, which was National Principals Recognition Month, I wanted to take a moment to publicly thank our principal, Edward Brandt, and vice principals Scott Ebner, Andrew Estrada, Jessica Long, and David Seidorf for all their hard work and dedication to our school district. We are very grateful to have them. Yes, we can clap. So this month, as many of you know, we also prepared for QSAC, which is the New Jersey Department of Education's Quality Single Accountability Continuum Review process. This process occurs every 3 years for school districts, and districts are rated on their performance in 5 key areas: instruction and program, governance, operations, fiscal management, and personnel. Our first steps in this process include gathering documentation for approximately 60 indicators. This ranges from policies to curriculum documents to budget calendars and board secretary reports. We then self-assess for each indicator based on our documentation and compliance. We review the scores with our QSAC committee, and you will see those scores for your approval tonight. I would like to thank Mrs. Spitzer, Mr. Brandt, Mrs. Publicover, Dr. Charney, Dr. Hall, Mr. McIsaac, Mrs. Gurnay, and Mrs. Duggan for participating in our review. We have given our district complete points for all indicators that we can score for ourselves for QSAC. I do want to note that we can only score ourselves for 40 out of the 100 points available in instruction and program, as the remaining 60 points are calculated automatically based on test scores, absenteeism, and graduation rates. We anticipate having those scores from the New Jersey Department of Education in December. We will then have our large on-site visit from the Department of Education in February. So thank you for your support in this process. Tonight, we have some mandated reports to go through, which are required through administrative code and accounted for through our QSAC process. Dr. Charney, our interim assistant superintendent, will present to you spring NJSLA scores as well as graduation pathways report. And Mr. Brandt will present to you our HIB self-assessment score as well as the school safety data system report for the reporting period 2 of last year. So with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Charney to come up to speak about our assessment results and our graduation pathways report.
Thank you for that, Jess, and thank the board. I used to sit among you. It's nice to see you again. So this evening, I'm going to present New Jersey SLA report. This is required.
Dr. Turner.
Can you go to the microphone? They just because the public then can't hear you if you don't talk into that microphone. We're getting it. It was a test.
Yeah. Do I need to repeat that again?
No, you're okay.
Okay. So this is a requirement of every district. We have to present New Jersey SLA scores. This is a statewide assessment of student learning, and that's what we're going to do tonight. So this review is that there are a number of parameters involved. What we need to look at, both in ELA, English Language Arts, and math, is the 4 and 5 areas. So 4 is meeting expectations, 5 is exceeding expectations, 3 is approaching the expectations. And I will say that you want to, as a district, you want to target that level because it's often 1 or 2 questions that students have missed. And if they get it, then they're elevated to meeting expectations. So in most districts I've been in, we don't give up on 1 and 2, but we try to target our approaching learners, and that would raise your scores. So here's a graphic of the state versus Hunterdon Central. This is our ELA grade 9. And so if you do the quick math, we're about the 76th percentile. That's pretty good for proficiency if you have the meeting and exceeding expectation. I've worked in high performance districts, and I consider this one a high performance. And they're generally in the mid 70s to, I've seen as high as 79%. So I think we're doing well in that regard. Here's a 5-year history, longitudinal survey of our work in ELA. You can see that the COVID years we dropped in terms of exceeding. That's the 21-22. That pretty much stretched into 22-23. We're starting to inch back up in 23-24. So we're getting there. There had been some learning loss as far as in the ELA over that period of time, but we're catching up. Here's our Algebra 1 scores. Unfortunately, it's not as successful as our ELA. We actually have in the 30th percentile, and there's some structural reasons for this I want to make you aware of. One is that when we get 8th grade students, we don't get the so-called cream of the crop. Those students take algebra in the middle school, either take Algebra 1 or geometry. Those are the high flyers. So the middle school gets to own that data. We do not. So 65% of the sending district students come to us as 8th graders having taken pre-algebra. We then have a set amount of time to catch them up, and that's a challenge for all districts that are not K through to 12. So our 9 through 12 kind of puts us at a disadvantage in terms of working with students. But I will go over some of the interventions we have that I think are successful to get these students back up to performance levels. So there's the 5-year history. Again, this is a national problem. The COVID years were challenging, and students were set back in their algebra skills and learning. We've inched up a little, and our goal is to really get students back up to proficiency on a larger scale. Our geometry, these were the students, the population I spoke of just a little while ago. These are the students that have taken Algebra 1 in middle school, so they're very skilled in math. So when we have them in 9th grade, they've already taken algebra in the middle school, and if you do the higher math, we're at 100%. So those students do well in geometry as 9th graders. Our 5-year history in this regard shows you that our meeting expectations is stable. Recently we had a nice pop in exceeding expectation. Again, these students are the high achievers in math, and we get them in the 9th grade. Our Algebra 2 are those students in middle school who have taken already Algebra 1 and geometry. We put them in Algebra 2 in the 9th grade. They're very successful in math. There's a little disappointment in the level 5. We're about half the proficiency of the state. And I'm not quite sure why. We're going to have to wrestle with that data and figure it out. There's the Algebra 2 5-year progression. And again, you can see the meeting expectations is generally stable. And our exceeding, we've had a nice little pop late in this year. Science proficiency is one that all districts in New Jersey struggle with. And the reason is it doesn't count toward graduation. The students know this. They don't perform. There's no stakes for them in this. So when we do test students in science proficiency, they're in the 40th percentiles. I mean, I worked on the first science assessment in the last century, late last century, and we had the same issue. We designed a very good test. It was called the HSPC at the time, but they knew it did not count, so they weren't going to try that hard. It's an issue. Here's a demographic comparison. So, this is females versus males. I don't see a significant difference in there. Arguably, the ELA, the girls do better than the boys, but I'm not so sure it's statistically significant. In Algebra 2, the boys do better than the girls, but again, not sure that it's statistically significant. This is our race ethnicity data. I think you can see there are populations that we need to target and intervene and help them achieve. These are a programmatic picture. Our students that are in special ed. All districts are challenged. Well, those students are challenged across the board, and we have interventions to help them, and we need to probably target them a little better. So I can tell you some of the interventions. First of all, the stakes have been reset. So New Jersey SLA no longer is counted toward graduation. Now it's been replaced by the New Jersey Graduate Proficiency Assessment, which is given in 11th grade. It makes more sense that we test kids closer to graduation, and so our results are predictably better, and I'll share those with you in a moment. We do use other assessments which they can use to graduate, PSATs, SATs. These are measures which students can get credit for, and I'll talk about alternate methods or approaches to graduation at the end. We use a multi-tiered system of supports. This is one of the district goals where we do what's called Tier 1 intervention. Those are things the classroom teacher can do to assist students in class. So that is a district goal. We're refining those approaches and looking for very effective approaches toward helping students in the classroom. For example, our math, we use a program called iExcel. It's a software that students use on their laptops that collects data on their algebra skills. So, for example, factor analysis, substitution capabilities. And so we get a trove of data on how we can sharpen and hone in on those skills from the use of that program. In ELA, we use Common Lit and targeted practice materials that we develop with the grade 11 teachers. We've diversified the novel and nonfiction offerings to give students more exposure to various literature styles and content. Our Block 5 tutorials are running where students can come in voluntarily to get help with algebra or ELA. My goal is to make this less voluntary. So in other districts, we've come up with positive incentivized programs that get kids in the seats and get them help. And once they realize, normally when you say Algebra 1 help, they run the other way. So our goal is to get them in the seats, help them with their homework, help them with their upcoming quiz or tests, get them to experience success, and then they become more willing to come to our Block 5 and seek help. So that's something we have to work on. The district is committed to our own assessments. We use a software program called Linkit. I've used this in other districts. What you develop is a digital footprint of student success. So from our 9th through 11th grade, we can assess what algebra skills they've grown in, which ones they need more attention. And we had a very good meeting with the descending districts this morning. They also use Linkit. So my goal is really to coordinate their data with ours. And so we will have a K-12 footprint. And that will assist the learner in large ways. So when students come to us in 9th grade, we can actually diagnose and determine what skill sets they need to work on, both on an individual basis and globally with the whole class. So this kind of big data analysis is what many districts are doing now, in fact, most. And it's nothing but helpful to the learner. So it tells our teachers, it informs them in a large way of what they need to work on in the next lesson. And more fundamentally, to the learner, the conversations change so that the teacher and the learner can work together on skills that learner needs to master. So it's a more targeted conversation and a more targeted assistance. And this is all done really through this program. So this district's in its 3rd year, is my understanding of Linkit, so we're well into that program, and I think the use of that data will assist us. And again, the last point, we do have evening tutorials. Those are mostly Zoom, as I understand. They're not avidly attended, and maybe we need to take a different approach to that. We continue to do vertical articulation with a K-8. I think that's going to be more of a bona fide effort this year, and I told you about our morning's visit. So the path is laid out. We we need to increase our proficiency levels, and algebra is going to be our focus. It's always good for a district to concentrate on maybe 2 to 3 goals and not broad. I think our ELA program is very solid. We need to do some work in Algebra 1, and I think that'll be a good mission. Graduation pathways, just briefly, what you see under ELA, most of our students graduate with their junior level assessment, New Jersey GPA. They have to score above a 725. You'll see that we're pretty successful with that when I show you the pie chart graphic. All those secondary pathways are acceptable to graduate. There are a variety of tests. They have, as I said, taken away the New Jersey SLA, and they have taken really what many districts used to use is the Air Force assessment, which many students use to achieve proficiency. The third pathway is what's called the portfolio. This is about 4.5% for the district. That's way too high. Generally, it should be less than 1%. So we're going to have to work on that too. In math, similarly, you have a 725 as a benchmark for graduation. There are a variety of tests you can take to receive credit, SATs, ACTs, PSATs, etc. Portfolio is also available for getting credit. The good news is 96.6% of our students graduate through one of these means. We had 22 students that did not graduate last year, and that was either because of chronic absenteeism or some other denial of credit. Here's a pie chart for pathways to proficiency. You can see largely 93% of our students take New Jersey GPA as a means to graduate. We have our secondary pathways a little less than 1%, and our third pathway, as I told you, is problematic. That's almost 5%, 4.8. That's large, and we're going to have to take a very good look at that and find ways to improve that measure. Our math pathways, again, most students use GPA to graduate. That's 73.6%. We actually moved that up 3% from last year. It's a large population. You have over 500 kids, so that's a good bump. And I will share with you some of our successes. So we take our most at-risk students, our 10th grade algebra students. That's a second time around, so they did not pass in the 9th grade. They're taken again in the 10th grade. We've moved that proficiency from 57% to 69%. That's a large population, and we've moved it considerably. So that's a success story. And what I leave you with is, if we have those students in our seats, our interventions and our Tier 1 classroom approaches work. So we can raise those scores and get kids to proficiency. And I think you've seen, our Algebra 2, similarly, by the time they're in school for the 2 years, we get them to graduate and through the requirement of math. Secondary pathway is 11% by means of those other tests, and again, the portfolio, the third pathway is 13.5%. That's high, and we have to work on that. So that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to entertain any questions from the board.
I guess I have one quick question. Thank you for all that. It's good to see you again, Dr. Charney. What kind of, I guess this is more practical, what kind of supports do we have during the day to help those students. My only concern is that I think students who need extra help sometimes bear the burden of showing up after hours, and I feel like those are students that need more support than for us to ask more of them.
So again, our 5th block is available for tutorial, but your point is a valid one. It's voluntary. I'd like to make it less voluntary, and what that would mean is coordination from the math teacher with the teacher that is assigned to that 5th block. So there's some communication between those teachers on helping Johnny master the concepts. So what does that look like? The algebra teacher coordinates with the lab teacher, the math lab teacher, that this student, according to the test data, needs help on factor analysis, factorials, work with that. So that gives it a mission. Often the learners, to your point, they'll come to a voluntary session if you can get them there, and they don't know what help they need. They just say, I don't get it. So I think this approach would be more targeted and would help students understand the segments they need to master the course. And I think what the data does is help us toward that pathway. So I'd say use of data, precise use of data will help us diagnose and then aid those students in a meaningful way. So again, I think what I'd like to work with teachers and the supervisors is really more positive incentives to attend this help session, because it's available during the day, it's available after school, and we have evening sessions. But you know, frankly, any district will see evening sessions are not well attended.
Thank you. If I could add, just so you know, we do have a very robust response to intervention system here. So that's a tier 2 support where we have teachers assigned to RTI duty, as we call it, and they work with the teachers reviewing data, usually from our common assessments and our testing data. They push in or pull out of the student's math class. Then in addition, and we do this in math and English, and then in addition, we also have math lab or English lab, where students can go there during their study hall. Sometimes when we see students are in that percentage that do need interventions, we tell them to come during their study hall. So we do have those interventions built in during the school day as well, not just the Block 5 as well. You're welcome.
Dr. Charney, you had mentioned the evening Zoom calls or Zoom help sessions. Are those live or are those taped?
No, those are, my understanding is they're live. They're just not well attended. I think we need to work on that, because I have been in districts where those are attended. So if you have to market it right. You have to say, okay, the test that's going to be given Wednesday will have a Zoom session Monday and Tuesday evenings. If you have any questions, the teacher will go over these topics and field any questions that you might have. If you market it right, you're going to increase that interest. And then, you know, communicating that to the parents and to teachers to announce would help.
Mrs. Gong, just so you know, we do offer after school in person, which is more attended than the Zooms in the evening. So when we offer those tutorials, we offer both options, because we know we have student athletes who maybe can't attend right after school, but more often than not, the after school is the more popular option than the evening Zoom session, as Dr. Charney said. Good. Any other? All right, thank you, Dr. Charney.
Thanks very much.
We will have Mr. Brandt up next with 2 presentations, the Hibbs self-assessment, as well as the SSDS report for reporting period 2 of last year. And I'll give them a little moment just to get set up.
Good evening, and thank you for this. So, once a year, I present our anti-bullying Bill of Rights school self-assessment. And this is conducted by what's called our school climate team. This is different than a climate and culture survey data team. This is a team made up of our anti-bullying coordinator, our anti-bullying specialists that we have 6 of, teachers and parents. And they meet 3 times a year here. It has to be a minimum of 2, but they meet here 3 times a year, and they review our data, review our policies, and also our protocols. The state provides, as it says there, is it going through? The state provides a 40-page rubric that breaks down, and there are 26 indicators, if you would, 26 indicators out of 8 elements, where we self-assess on that scale from 0 to 3. We need to score at least a 52 total in order to meet the basic requirements, and there's a maximum score of 78. So here's a breakdown of the 8 different core elements. They go everywhere from the training to board policy to curriculum and instruction in our classrooms, and also then how we execute the actual HIB investigations and reports and such. So to walk through all of these briefly, if you would. So the first element is an overview of the program. And one of the areas I'd like to highlight, the 5th bullet there, if you would, it says the school climate team has examined data for identifying patterns. So that's something every year that not only myself, of course, as principal, I see each one of them come in, but that team will take a look to see if there's any patterns, anything they see either by grade level, by distinguishing characteristic. And 2 of the patterns we see typically over the last few years are usually 9th and 10th grade students who are involved in this. And I think part of that is the work we do. And as students get older, they get a little more mature, they learn how to also deal with conflict a little bit better. But the other trend we saw this past year was a couple isolated incidences that dealt with either within teams or in clubs. So what we've done this past year, we not only do we have our training for all of our staff and students, but we've also had specific training for all of our coaches on working on anti-bullying, anti-hazing, all the above within their programs that they either coach or advise. Our Dean of Students, Mr. Cohen, had a meeting last week with all of our advisors walking through this as well. Look-fors, indicators to pay attention to see if there's anything going on within the team or within the club. Either possibly, for example, a student being isolated within it and bullied. But also we've seen, as you try to build a team or a club and unity, there's a little bit of a loyalty there. And sometimes the students who are maybe part of a team but also see something that's going wrong, they have that conflict of who are they more loyal to. So to work students and help students through that process as well was one of the factors coming out of those patterns. Another element there is working with and recognizing the board policies. We also have training for all the staff members, and you see the first bullet there, the teaching staff completes 2 hours of suicide prevention training and HIB prevention training. That's 2 hours within a 5-year span. This is the year that all staff are going through that 2-hour training as part of their overall training. The 4th element there, you see curriculum and instruction on HIB. 2 areas that we really focus on are in the 9th grade health and the 10th grade health and phys ed classes. We also have the teen mental health that takes place within the 10th grade, and within that is our HIB training. And then also our Week of Respect, which we recognized a few weeks ago. And again, this report is on last year's school year. So last year was October 2nd through the 6th. The 5th element is on our personnel. And we're very fortunate, and I want to thank you, board too, for supporting the fact that we have 6 anti-bullying specialists. There are times where we've worked with incidences that have taken place between 2 schools, maybe one of our students with a student in another school. And so far, every one of the schools we've ever worked with maybe had 1, maybe 2 people who take care of and work with any of the HIB investigations. And we're fortunate that we have 6 anti-bullying specialists. They pair up 2 at a time, each investigation. And they're listed there, as well as the parents and other staff members who are part of that climate team, if you would, that conducted this self-assessment. That team meets, to get the full points, you need to meet more than 2 times a year, and they meet 3 times a year. And again, that's the group that will, throughout the year, take a look at any of those patterns and give feedback to us as a full staff and administration. And then the 6th element there is on our incident reporting. Our protocols that we walk through for each one of the reports. The investigation itself, there's parameters that we have to follow there. For example, being completed within 10 school days. Written report is prepared for every one of these investigations. And then lastly, all confirmed HIB investigations and violations are reported through the SSDS, which is the next report I'm going to provide. And also, once a year, the self-assessment gets placed on our website. So after tonight, I'll share this with Ms. Nagala to place on our website. And this is a recap, if you would. The team felt that we exceeded the minimum in each one of those areas. This is the first year we've had 78 out of 78 points. If you recall, a couple of years ago and last year, we fell short just by a couple points of that perfect score. And one of those areas was, for example, we had a staff member who was also a parent, kind of served on that. And we felt, you know what, no, we need to get a parent in here as well that is not also a staff member as part of that climate team. And we took care of that last. And to give an overview of some of the data from last year, there were 33 reports submitted to the principal's office. Some of them, I felt that I could use that predetermination, not to say that the conflict or whatever took place didn't take place, but it didn't fall under the parameters of an HIB investigation. So then we might treat it just as a basic code of conduct violation, if you would, and investigated by our vice principals. There were 3 others that were also out of district. So that might be, for example, a student from our residence, but is placed and goes to school in another location. The investigation takes place in the homes, in the school where that took place. And that happened 3 times last year. And of those 33 reports, there were 8 confirmed HIBs. Again, that was the 23-24 school year. There's an overview of that. Before I go on to the SSDS, or any questions?
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Just regarding the team structure, how do you go about selecting who's on the team and also the parent? How
That's a
the
good
parent
question.
is selected?
So the team itself, the anti-bullying specialists, each of our 4 student assistance counselors and 2 other counselors. And one of the reasons why we take that route is we feel that the students might be a bit more comfortable going through that process with a counselor rather than a vice principal. Some smaller schools, the principal is the person who's running the investigation. Plus, they also see, each one of the investigations, there may be a consequence, if you would, but there's also restorative piece too. And with the student assistance counselors being in the forefront of it, they're able to provide, I think, solid recommendations for what type of resources we might help these students. What we don't do is we don't have a student, for example, if I was a 12th grader and I was part of an investigation, they don't pair me up with the 12th grade student assistance counselor, because that person may be the one ending up helping out with the restorative piece rather than the investigation. So we put it off to a different grade level as best we can. And then the parent, think this past year, that was somebody who was very involved, came to a number of our home and school association meetings, and was somebody who had a couple students go through the program here, and in a casual conversation, hey, would you be interested in being part of this team? And they were, and they helped out throughout the year. So that's how, for the parent. For the staff members, I know one of them at least is part of the health teachers who also then teach at the 9th and 10th grade level and push in with the HIB training within. So they don't have to then pay. They're probably the closest, if you would, to that team of teachers who are working with the 9th and 10th graders to provide feedback to them. All right, I'm going to shift gears then to the second report. So this is the Student Safety Data Systems Report. This report is provided twice a year, and they break the state has us break up the school year from July 1st to December 30th. That would be the first half of the year, if you would, and then January 1st through June 30th for the full second 6 months of that school year. So this report is based on those last 6 months of last school year. So what gets reported? Basically, well, and it used to be called the Violence and Vandalism Report in the state that shifted to that SSDS acronym. Any violence, any vandalism, any weapons offenses or substance offenses get reported. We also report any of the HIB investigations and findings. And anything that leads to a student being removed from class. And I bring that up because of our last year was the first year, I guess in about 15 years, that we've had in-school suspension and support. So that plays a factor in some of the numbers that we have here. This is just a comprehensive list of everything that gets reported. And this gets reported through a system on the New Jersey Department of Ed homeroom. Every one of these incidences we have to enter in, and then at the end of the 6-month cycle, submit that report to the state. Part of that report is the HIB investigation, so I know I spoke about this already, but these numbers are of the second set of 6 months from last year. So from January 1st through June 30th of last school year, there were 23 reports, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can see that there were, in that second half of the year, 4 confirmed HIBs, and there were a variety of, I don't say reasons, but distinguishing characteristics of the target with that. Also, we report these items, anything under the umbrella of violence. We have assault, criminal threat, and fighting, vandalism, substance offenses, and I do want to highlight a big change, significant change from that same 6 months year prior. The year prior, there were 55 substance offenses in that 6-month window, and it dropped down to 18. And there were, again, the same 6 months of the year before, there were 25 instances of possession of substance or paraphernalia, and that dropped down to 7. So we're pleased with that. There's the other bullet points there point out reasons why a student would be either suspended or in school suspended. I point out the cell phone violation, and I mentioned this, I think 6 months ago too. I do want to point out that none of those suspensions for a cell phone violation were because the student had their phone out in class or something like that. This was if they took a picture of something they shouldn't be taking, for example, in the bathroom and posting it. And that's something we frown upon, as you can imagine, whether you're in school or anywhere. That's a violation. So I don't want you to think that we're suspending students. They have their phone out for a second time in class, for example. But I also want to point out the disobedience and open defiance. That was significantly higher than the year before, but majority of the reason is these are instances of students got in-school suspension or support, not out-of-school suspension. So the previous year, we didn't have in-school suspension as an option. Student either got the 3-hour extended detention on a Wednesday or out-of-school suspension. And we feel that there's instances where the in-school suspension and support is a better option. The student's here in school, in the building, and we have resources to push in, like the student assistance counselors, to help the students for better decision-making down the road. And those are, I also want to point out too, the 2 weapons instances were a result of searches based on suspicion for substance. So it wasn't that a weapon was used or brandished or in any way, but a weapon was found. Some of the interventions and prevention systems that we have, and I've shared this slide before, we have a number of ways to help support students in their decision-making and one of the best ways is to get involved in something proactive here at school. So I thank you to the board for supporting all of those areas. But also you'll see on the bottom there that in-school suspension and support. Last year was the first year we had that in quite a long time. And first year was a learning process, and we're looking to improve on it this year. But again, I do think having the students here rather than home, for the most part, is a better decision. And then the PMT training, I want to thank you too, because as a board you supported this. PMT training is training that helps, it's called the Physical and Psychological Management Training. And this is basically de-escalation, proactive de-escalation of conflict, if you would. All of our security and duty release aides went through that training. And it was, the feedback was very positive. And once they get that long 8-hour training under their belt, every year then they have a smaller 2 to 3 hour window of retraining to help us. And all of us administrators, the vice principals and myself went through that as well. And then lastly, resources and recommendations, again, partly from the administrative team and partly also from that climate team that I mentioned in the HIB report. These are the number of the areas also that we look to help, steer students into healthier and better decisions that don't lead them to getting on a report like this. And that's it.
Thank you so much for all that good information, and thank you for being such a resource for students and really engaging them and supporting them the way you do. I just have a question. In terms of the PMT training, does that include any de-escalation techniques for consideration for mental health experiences? Suppose we have students with mood dysregulation difficulties, and we know that typical de-escalation techniques might not be effective. Does this cover the mental health piece as well for de-escalation?
It does. It doesn't get incredibly specific for mental health, but it's used both also for our security team, but also our staff members who in our Autism Able program as well. Because there's a proactive piece of it, de-escalation, but then there's also the piece of if you are to need to restrain a student, to do it in a safe way, both for the student and for the person doing it, rather than just getting up there and cold tackling them. Both whether it's individually or as a team, it felt very similar to as if you were helping somebody passing out, getting next to them, holding them, but then getting them to in a safe position. And I could see that, taking place also for something like you're talking about.
Thank you.
How do these results align with the climate and culture survey? So are we seeing any differences in these security reports, and do you think that they're impacting any of the changes we saw in the climate and culture survey?
That's a good question. I think one connection that I would say, and if you recall and it's one of the areas that pushed us to up the ante, if you would, on keeping the phones away during class time. The Climate and Culture Survey had a piece in there where some of the students indicated that bath lavatories were an area that they didn't feel safe. And likewise, I mentioned there about the students who were suspended because of cell phone violations. That tended to be also connected with, for example, in the lavatory, where students are taking their phones at a lavatory and either taking pictures or that they shouldn't be, and posting them. So that and also the feedback we got about long lines in the lavatories. And I don't know, you talk about correlation versus causation. I don't know if it's a direct cause, but there's definitely a correlation between, right now, it seems that the numbers of how long the lines are for the bathroom and how long students are in the bathroom. They don't have their phone on them, they're going in there taking care of business, washing their hands and getting back to class, as opposed to taking that time as a little brain break and, surfing the net on their phone. So I've been periodically paying attention to that. Genesis on our dashboard, I have it right there. I can see how long individuals are in the lavatory, and it seems to be moving along. So that's an area that I would say is one that we're looking to, I'm looking forward to if we see a difference this year in the climate and culture survey with the lavatories.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brandt.
All right, thank you.
All right, I promise we're almost there. We saved the best for last. You do have a HIB and suspension report. We'll review HIB in executive session. So for the final part of my report, I would like to welcome our student representative, Bronwyn Downey, to our table. She will share her student representative report with us tonight, and in the interest of respecting her schedule, will step away from the table afterward. We're grateful for your valuable time, Bronwyn, and your commitment to keeping us informed.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bronwyn Downey. I am a junior here, and I am the student representative for this board. I will be giving a report tonight from Central students about events, clubs, and sports, and ideas and suggestions directly from students. Firstly, if you saw teachers and students dressed in cowboy boots with crazy hairstyles or decked out in white, red, black, or gray, you should know that our first Spirit Week was a major success, with the sophomores beating out all the other classes with their school spirit. Our homecoming football game ended with a win against East Brunswick and the crowning of Ryan Miller and Caden Brandt as homecoming royalty. And good news, all of our freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and some seniors survived PSAT and NJ GPA testing, with the freshmen being rewarded with a field trip to Dorney Park last Friday. Upcoming events include the Thespian Spectacular Performance, Honor Society inductions for Tri-Am and World Languages, a Hispanic Heritage Month celebration, and the junior-senior play Anti-Mame later in November. Additionally, one of our Teen Pep classes hosted their family night last Thursday, and the second class will be holding theirs tomorrow night. Club Sectors, which is an initiative to increase inter-club collaboration and projects based on values like wellness, community service, and civic and social justice, are getting underway with plans to create a leadership team with Erin and I, as well as student leaders. To start off the year, the Wellness Sector will be hosting a volleyball competition on November 6th. The Central Student Council is currently working on creating an officer board to increase participation, and we are also planning a Spirit Student Showdown event where students will receive points for their grade by participating in events and attending student council meetings. Our Winter Spirit Week is fast approaching, and by popular student and teacher demand, will include our favorite excuse to be comfortable, which is pajama day. Finally, the boys soccer and girls tennis teams were Hunterdon Warren Sussex County champions, and fall sports are beginning to wrap up. Mr. Brandt and Ms. Cangelosi-Hade have been meeting with students during unit lunch to discuss the new phone policies at Central, and are planning on holding monthly meetings with different student groups to continue gaining input on our thoughts and ideas. Many students have expressed understanding about why cell phone policies are being put into place, and have also expressed desires for consistency in the effort to reduce screen usage in the classroom. Additionally, an anonymous feedback form was sent out recently and has allowed students to share their ideas for Central. For example, many students have expressed appreciation for the continuation of unit lunch and have made suggestions about tutorial and student schedules, all of which Erin and I will be discussing with Mr. Brandt, Mr. Cohen, and Ms. Cangelosi-Hade in the upcoming months. Overall, the student body is getting back into the swing of school, feeling super pumped up from Spirit Week, and excited about the increase of representation they have here at Central. Erin and I hope to continue reaching out to our peers through meetings and feedback collection in order to continue displaying the passion Central students have for their school. Thank you.
That's great. Yes. Thank you, Bronwyn. Thank you. Okay, and that concludes my report, Ms. Blutfield. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bronwyn, and it was great having you join us at the table here. We will now open it up to the first residents forum. This forum will be for action items on the agenda only. It will last a maximum of 30 minutes, and each resident can speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Do I have anyone who would like to speak to action items on the agenda? Nope. Okay, we will move on to organizational items. We have, excuse me, 2 organizational items. School self-assessment for determining grades under the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act and the New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum District Performance Review. Can I have a motion for those 2 organizational items?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can you just quickly go over what the different categories in QSAC are and the types of things that go into those, please?
Oh, good question.
Yes, I don't know if it's quick, but I'll do my best. Okay, so you can hear me? Okay. So instruction and program, like I said, the majority of that covers test scores. That will be based on the NJSLA scores that Dr. Charney just presented, as well as the graduation rate and then chronic absenteeism. The second part of that really primarily deals with curriculum. So they'll be looking for curricula in each area. We send a sample, but then when they come in, they also request curricula. So they're looking for all the components that are required. So not standards, they're looking for pacing in a pacing guide. They're looking for what assessments we do and that there's a variety of assessments. Interdisciplinary connections, 21st century life and careers connections. There's a whole list, including textbooks as well. So we do have that, and that will be part of our visit. Fiscal management is really all under Mrs. Spitzer. So that's a million different things. There's a lot about the budget process. And there's policies in there as well. There's board secretary reports, the budget calendar she uploads, basically everything that you could think of, we have to upload. Governance is a variety of, it hits a few of us. So it's not just governance in the sense of a board of education, but it's also how we govern the school. So there's things in there that are kind of all over the place. It might go from gifted and talented. It might go into a little bit into special education and nursing. It hits a little bit of every area. Operations, similarly, is not just in the way that we refer to operations with Mr. Thornton and his crew. It hits us all a little bit in different ways. So, and I can't recall if this one is in governance or operations, but our school improvement panel is a key component. Your disclosure acts, your ethics disclosure acts is in one of those. Your evaluation of the superintendent is in those. And then in all of these, there's a bunch of policies. So as you recall, our policy committee worked really hard to get us updated, and this was one of the reasons why. And then finally, personnel, much of that deals with evaluation. Some is monitored remotely by us submitting evaluation scores for our staff. But then they're also looking at what % rates we have in terms of errors when we submit. They will come in and monitor files. They'll go through personnel files to make sure everything is there. They will look at professional development plans to make sure that they're based on data as well as previous year recommendations for staff. They will look at do we board approve all new staff, and do we have them do background checks? So there's a huge variety of things, and I think Mrs. Duggan said it, but I'm happy to share the sheet with you all so you can see the specifics. It's also available on the Department of Education website, but I will share it with you all separately so you can see all the many components of that.
Thank you for those details. Thank you for that question. I will now open it up to the committee reports. Oh, what? Oh, we didn't vote. You're right. Sorry. Right, so we had a motion and a second. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bledfield?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
We will now open it up to the committee reports. Student Life and Program Committee, Mr. Reimer is not here. Ms. Santangelo, would you be able to give that report? Or do you want?
Okay, Student Life and Program met, I think, about 2 weeks ago because we arranged our meetings early. Not many action items. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 deal with tuition. 1 and 2 are tuition for us to send our students out. Number 1 is for our special education students, and you'll see some of that includes extended school year. It may include an aid cost as well. Number 2 is for a general education student. We don't see many of these, but we do have one. And then number 3 is for students coming to us from North Hunterdon Voorhees School District for our multilingual learner program. So that puts our total now at, I believe, 7 students that we've received from North Hunterdon Voorhees. Number 4 is for early graduation for some students, and you do have details about those students and their applications in the agenda. And then number 5 is really exciting. It's a partnership with Bright and Beautiful Therapy Dogs. This is actually our school-based youth services, which is a partnership that we have with Hunterdon Healthcare. School-based youth services wants to bring in Bright and Beautiful Therapy Dogs that would be open to all students. It was a big success last year. They want to continue it this year, so we're just looking for approval for that program. And they did provide their certificate of liability insurance, which makes Mrs. Spitzer happy and able for us to put it on the agenda. And that is the Student Life and Program report.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for Student Life and Program items 1 through 5?
So moved.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bledfield?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Operations and Transportation Committee, do we have someone who can give, you can do it? Thank you.
I'm going to do Operations and Transportation tonight. We have 13 items to move from the Operations and Transportation Committee. Items 1, 2, and 3 are our standard financial reports, invoices, transfers. For financial reports, we are looking at the monies that were spent during the month of August 31st of this year, and our board secretary makes sure that no major accounts have been overexpended in violation of NJAC 6A 23A 16.10. For our invoices, this for August, the total was $6,643,983. For item number 3, we are approving the line account transfers, and that's so that we can actually pay our bills. So that's always a good thing. Item number 4 is to approve the annual memorandum of agreement between education and law enforcement officials with the Raritan Township Police Department for the 2024-2025 school year. So whenever you have law enforcement officers at your school, you need to do this. It's an 84-page document if anybody is interested. Item number 5 is to approve the joint transportation agreement between Hunterdon Central and Delaware Valley Regional High School to transport Hunterdon Central students on field trips. And you can see the cost per day on the agenda. Item number 6 is to approve the joint transportation agreement between the Kingwood Township School District and Hunterdon Central to transport 2 students under the Choice Program. And again, you can see the cost per day on the agenda. Item number 7 is to allow us to dispose of items from the school radio station. These items are surplus property with no value, and we authorize our business administrator to dispose of the property. And I also found out that sometimes she can actually post it to see if we can actually get any money for it. So that's exciting. Item number 8 is to approve the contract to award Paul's Transfer Company to transport our marching band equipment. And this is for the 2024-2025 school year. And we go out and we do request different quotes, but the only one who has responded was Paul's Transfer Company. They've done it in previous years, so they have the contract. And just a little plug for the Marching Red Devils. They were at South Brunswick High School this weekend. They didn't get a gold medal, silver, or bronze, but they played their heart out. Someone sent me a screenshot. They were excellent. They were excellent. I would have given them first place. Item number 9 is to accept the following school bus evacuation drills conducted pursuant to NJAC 6A:27-11.2 under the supervision of our principal. And these drills were conducted on September 17th, and everything went well. Items number 10 and 11 work hand in hand. Item number 10 is to approve the district multi-year comprehensive maintenance plan pursuant to NJAC 6A:36A. The law requires us to spend a certain amount on maintenance for our campuses, and we spend over $500,000 for each campus. So thank you for keeping everything up to date. Item number 11, as I said, works hand in hand with item number 10, and it is the specific numbers on spreadsheets that Mrs. Spitzer puts together. So it's to approve the 2024-2025 annual maintenance budget worksheet, Form M-1, to establish the 2025-2026 maximum maintenance reserve amount. Item number 12 is to approve student tuition contracts with Somerset County Vocational School District for the 2024-2025 school year. So we have 6 students who are in a dance program, and it costs for each student $5,750 for a total of $34,500. Item number 13 is regarding professional service providers and to approve 3 resolutions. This is something that we must do so that we are able to help the students who perhaps are in a hospital or an institution. So we've got 5 home instructors listed here, and as I said, we need to do this. And with that, I'd like to move items 1 through 13 for approval.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? No. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes, with exception to item number 2, invoices, specifically Gorman, Danella, and Morlock.
Okay. A no, I'm sorry? A no on that one?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Peterson?
Yes, on 1 through 13, with the exception of 2, I have a check in there to myself, so I have to abstain from that vote.
Thank you. Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bloodfeld?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion's carry.
I have a question. Did we come to any agreement if we abstain or vote no on something? Are we supposed to give a reason or say something about that? Is that something we had talked about?
We did sort of talk about that. I mean, nobody says you have to, but we did kind of discuss that would be a good
I thought
idea.
so. Thanks.
Yeah. I will give the Personnel Committee report.
Before you do that, Mrs. Butfield, may I give a quick report out for the Joint Transportation Committee?
Oh, yes, please do.
The Joint Transportation Committee met on October 16th. We had a robust conversation as we continued to work on the dissolution of the JTC partnership and develop next steps. We continue to review the financial numbers and analyses of the bus routes It appears that there is a cost savings to Hunterdon Central due to the inefficiencies tied to the coordination of the FRSD bus routes and school start times. One of the primary tasks ahead of us is to find an appraiser with mechanical and equipment expertise to assist in valuing the assets, the buses, the vans, the equipment used to service the vehicles, and so on. And we continue to work with FRSD in making sure all of our students are transported safely, especially the pre-K students. I do want to add that FRSD is steadfast in their desire to build their own transportation department and not engage in a shared services arrangement with Hunterdon Central. So that is, FRSD does not want to become a customer of Hunterdon Central, which might be the most practical solution going forward. And of course, we will assist FRSD during the transition as much as we are able to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Personnel Committee. I will start out with item number 1. We have 2 very big retirements this month, 2 very big positions here. Scott Cohen, Dean of Students, and Don Thornton, Manager of Operations, both retiring at year end. So I thank you both for all your contributions to the district and wish you well in retirement. You'll be missed. We have 3 resignations. Number 3, we have the appointment of a replacement health and PE teacher, hourly appointments, and number 4. Number 5 is our long-awaited HCAA labor agreement that has already been ratified by the HCAA. And then along with that, we have in 6 and 7 the revised salaries due to the new agreement. They will be retroactive to July 1st. Number 8, we have substitute rates for the 2024-2025 school year. 9 and 10, we have new bus driver rates and amendments to substitute bus driver rates. Those have all been approved with the JTC. 11 through 13, we have appointments for substitute teachers, substitute bus drivers, substitute nurses. 14 through 19, appointments for special services, AM, PM supervision, athletic workers, chaperones, PM security, home instructors, and test proctors, monitors, and test coordinators. Number 20, we have the appointment of a six block stipends for an English class, replacing a teacher on a leave of absence. 21 is professional development. 22 through 24, Schedule C advisors, Schedule D coaches, and unpaid community volunteers. 25, we have salary guide advancements for the HCEA staff, and that's done 3 times a year. 26, we have the athletic site manager stipends. That's the new position we talked about last month. 27, we have an amendment to unaffiliated staff salary increases based on the HCAA contract increases. 28, leaves of absences. 29, we are rescinding a couple of appointments. 30, we have 2 terminations. And then finally, 31, we have an HCEA sidebar that adds Juneteenth as a holiday for the maintenance staff and adds positions to Schedule D for unified sports teams and flag football. These activities were previously paid through grants that are no longer available. I will move personnel items 1 through 31.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? No? Okay. Now roll call, please.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes, with exception to professional development number 21, items 11 and items 30.
Item 11 and 30. Thank you. Ms. Gong
Yes.
and Mrs. Blutfield,
Yes.
with 5 motions carry.
Okay, just get to my page. Okay, we have Policy Committee. Ms. Peterson.
Yes, we have it's only one page this month, so we're very excited. We have only 3 items on for first read today. We have 2 regulations, which again are not really, we just approved them to, support the administration, but the administration really focuses on the regulations. We focus on the policy. Regulation 1613 is disclosure and review of applicants' employment history from July 2018. Regulation 1642, which is an earned sick leave law from 2021 update. And then we have policy 5111, which is eligibility of resident, non-resident students, which was updated in September 2023 and just really has some technical legal updates about tuition and all sorts of fun things. We have 4 policies to abolish this month for the first read. We have policy 2427, which is information processing skills, which was last amended in 2001. And if you would like to know how to use your word processor, would be a very beneficial class, but seemed a little bit out of date for what we have now. Policy 4143 is dismissal. We have policy 4140 and 4103, 4143, which are, am I reading the right one? 4140 and 4143. So we have 2 policies. One is called dismissal and one is called termination, based on the same group. They cover the same content, though 4140 is a bit more thorough than 4143, and 4140 is a policy from our vendor. So I think 4143 might have been homegrown. So we're keeping 4140. If you followed any of that, that's from our vendor. So we're sticking with our vendor and removing the homegrown one. We don't need duplicates. Policy 5520 is an older plagiarism policy from 1998. We have an academic integrity policy, which is 5701.01, which was last updated in September 2023. So we're going to keep that one, get rid of the duplicate there. And then we had 2 student identification card policies. We had one of them, which was last updated in 2004, and then a much more thorough one, which is 5517, and has all the information that actually the state requests and or requires that we put on there, including suicide hotline numbers and things like that. So we are keeping the more up-to-date student ID card policy, which was last updated in September 2022, and we are abolishing 5503. All of these second reads, which we have 13 items, nothing has changed since last month. We didn't have any comments or changes requested, so they are as is. The committee also discussed feedback that we've received from students and staff, as well as discussions from the Home and School Association meeting related to the cell phone policy the committee's been working on. We will likely be putting that out in November for first read. I want to thank both Ms. Gong and Mrs. Santangelo for joining me in attending the Home and School Association meeting with Mr. Brandt. We were able to gather really valuable feedback, and I think it was really excellent to have the members there of the policy committee to really take that kind of feedback from everybody, and I thought it was kind of fun to go through everything. So the committee also came to a consensus that the final first reads for the year for our committee are going to occur in November's meeting next month. In the past, the board has done first reads in December and then had second reads in January, which leads brand new board members to be voting on a second read on a policy they've never had any interaction with. So we've decided to, in the interest of transparency, to have our last first reads in November and wrapping up our committee's 2024 work in December and not have any carryover policies. It has been an excellent year, and I really want to thank every person who's on the committee for working so hard. So, with that, I move items 1, 2, and 3.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bloodfield?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Okay, other committee reports. Do we have anything for communications this month?
No, we were told not to meet this month.
Okay. We did Joint Transportation and Racism, Equity, and Diversity Committee.
No, we were also told not to meet this month in the interest of time, and I have to go on record and say I would appreciate a less autocratic process for this board to make decisions like that from our acting president.
Okay. Student discipline, I don't think we don't have anything. Okay, we have two other items on here for additional board business. Just before we get to that, I just wanted to make everyone aware that October is a big safety awareness month. It actually has 2 weeks in there. There's a National School Bus Safety Week and also America's Safe Schools Week. So in recognition of those weeks that had just recently passed, I would like to thank all of our bus drivers, our SRO, Class 3 officers, and all of our security guards for helping to keep our students safe, both going to and from school and while they are here in our building. Along those lines, we also have a statement we would like to read. Ms. Kellogg, could you read the statement, please?
We want to thank Mr. Tanko for his many years of service. As members of a public body, we take oaths to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey, which protects the rights of all citizens. We recognize that people have diverse views on most subjects and are happy to have resolved our differences with Mr. Tanko. We appreciate Mr. Tanko's commitment to the security of our students and staff and to respecting the viewpoints of others.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to echo that applause for our security and our SROs and our bus drivers who've been through a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last week was New Jersey School Board's conference, and I know we had several board members who attended. I don't know if anyone would like to share anything that they learned or any thoughts that they had from attending the conference.
I took notes. I just haven't gotten this. This is them. But there was a lot of good information on Robert's rules about, information sharing amongst the board and everything like that. So there's always really good information. And for those of you who did go, if you look on your show planner, you can usually get the download of the presentations that they did. So
Okay.
if you. I find that really helpful every year, but it was excellent, and it was good to see so many people there this year.
Okay.
I would just like to add, I also have a whole bunch of notes that I've not looked at, so thank you, Rebecca. It was interesting, no matter what session you went to, whether it was about board governance or student achievement, the punchline at the end of the session was, thank you for your service. And we do it for the students. We do it for all the students, and I thought that was great. The other thing that I did was attend various keynote speaker sessions, and those were incredibly inspiring, and I'd love to share it with the board later. There's one speaker, John, I always get his name, Quinones, who does What Would You Do? I don't know if you guys watched that on television, but we've done that with our daughters. There was also Maria from Sesame Street, Sonia Manzano. But both keynote speakers, even though they were speaking separately at different times, different days, and I don't think they compared notes, they were just inspired by a particular teacher. And that was just so great to hear. And they both had the same message, again, but in different sessions. So Quinones said, all you have to do is take that first step on the ladder for a kid, whether the kid is a high achiever or not. They don't need to see the end of that ladder, but if you just get them on that first step and just let them go. And again, Maria from Sesame Street, Sonia Manzano, she said, yes, if they could just take that first step, just let them go. So it was just really, really inspiring. So thank you for letting me go to the first convention. Loved it.
Anyone else? No? Okay, I will now open it up to the second residents forum. This is for general comments. It could be anything either on or off the agenda. And again, it will be a maximum of 30 minutes, and each person can speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Any comments? No?
Oh, wait, no, here you go.
Oh, okay. I can do one on mine.
my phone.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
You have it, because I can do it too.
I have it.
Okay.
I didn't want the ring to be obnoxious.
Good evening. My name is Jim Vargas. I'm not a resident of this community anymore. I reside in Monmouth Beach, but I'm still a member of the community because I belong to the parish over here. Wanted to comment on a letter from Paul Tankel. One, I want to thank you for at least taking the time out and addressing it. And I'm glad that you were able to set aside your differences between the board and Mr. Tanko. But I feared that it does not go very well to explain the exact situation. It seems like there was a disagreement and it was fixed, but that's not what's true. Mr. Tanko was the subject of a very onerous administration under Mr. Moore. He took basically what he did was he acted on his free speech. He was chastised and penalized for it. Mr. Moore actually sent a letter into his file that said he put students at risk, and which was not true. And as I said before at this podium, the only person that put people at risk was Mr. Moore. It also doesn't go in, you had a chance to recover a number of things that were going on under that previous administration. It was just people who felt like Mr. Moore did were allowed to speak. People who felt like that did disagree were not. It went from students who were challenged, from teachers who supported him, who spoke loudly. Other teachers said they were afraid to speak. Even here on the board, 2 members of this board spoke out. Some people took offense, and I gave it to free speech. Both were allowed. One was just patted on the head. The other one was actually challenged and threatened. So it just doesn't go to. I think you missed a point a little bit on this, and I think it could have been done a little bit better. Having said that, you know, most of the board is gone. The elections are coming up, and we're looking forward to a new year. I hope you progress along this path. That's more freedom about it. But you're facing many challenges. I've given testimony at the state school board. I testified at state senate and the assembly. There's a much attack on parental rights and parental authority. And it starts from everything from Planned Parenthood, which has any child of any age, any woman can go get contraceptives or abortion and their parents don't have to know. You can't affect that, but you can let teachers support that. Other issues like there's a board, I don't know if it was passed, but recently you had to be 16 or over to select that you would go for, a student would want to go for treatment for an illness they had or a mental illness they had. The Senate wanted to change that down from 16 to 14. And they thought it was nothing. Basically what they did is they took parental rights away from all your freshmen and sophomores, and there are 200,000 students in the state. That keeps on going on and on, where the environment that you had at one point that had a view of the world supported by the state, and it was stated by state regulation and government. You're the one place here that can protect parents and students. You're the one that represents both sides. You're the one that has to come up and protect us. So I won't spend much time on that because many of the boards are leaving here. There's a new election. I'll come back then and talk about it. But there's a real danger. There's a real danger out there. And even, I'll tell a small thing where I wasn't planning the testimony, but there was a thing come up where, you know, in the state contracts, they awarded basic thing on needs, minorities, and that type of thing. And they were moving the whole LGBTN over into that. And that's fine to look at it. But I got up and testified. I said, well, when you look at this now, you've got women, you've got every minority, and you've got people with sexual preference. The only person on this side of the thing is the traditional man and wife and family. And they're the only one that isn't granted special permission. And I said, the other thing you have to do is when you look at the LGBT environment, the largest portion of that is bisexual. And by saying this, you're telling me that just because a person chooses a sexual behavior, they get more preference over contracts in the government than a person that has a traditional family. And they just kind of snubbed it off. So my charge to you, those of you who stay and those of you who are going to be elected, is to keep it wide open, keep abreast of what's going on. Be balanced, do your job, protect the students, protect the children. And just to let you know, I've been working with a lot of people. I've encouraged people to engage and get to know what their board is and go vote for their issues. And in next year, I'm working with some people where we're going to try to get more people that would attend school boards just to listen, just to understand what's going on and get involved. Thank you again for your service. Thank you again for your time. God bless.
Good evening, Sandra DeVore, Raritan Township. For those of us who have been praying for Mr. Tanko, we would like to thank God that he has been vindicated. Mr. Tanko suffered religious persecution at the hands of Dr. Moore because Mr. Tanko's sincerely held religious beliefs did not align with Dr. Moore's radical agenda. This was a win for Mr. Tanko, but also for our freedom of religion and freedom of speech. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak?
I just wrote down my math department supervisor number from years ago. Let me correct that. My name's Ed Brandt, principal here at Hunterdon Central. A couple meetings ago, when Dr. Shadow was here as interim superintendent, a number of you, if not all of you, made very pleasant, positive comments about how we were honored to be marked number 14th in the state of all the high schools. And, you know, you threw a lot of accolades about some of the great programs we have here. But I want to pass it back to you, too, both as board members and residents, to pass back to your constituents. We have a tremendous number of people here in the district that help us totally also. All the staff members here and students can't do it themselves, of course. And I think of all the people you just mentioned about the Marching Red Devils over the weekend. And if you've ever been here to a game to see the number of parents who help out get their show on the road every halftime, it's amazing. The Robotics Club, all the different committees and programs, the Booster Clubs, the Home and School Association, all the sponsors, you see all the banners out here, that's community members and businesses that provide money to help us offset some of the expenses. And I think last year when we had that first ever service and career fair here at Hunterdon Central, and the number of community members who came in to help connect with our students. So I want to pass that back to all of you. Thank you very much for everything you do, and moving forward as well. It's a great partnership. And I don't live in the community, so I don't get a chance really too often to say it casually, you know, in the store or anything like that to anybody to say, hey, thank you for all your support. But been here quite a while, since '97, and it's always been a steady, positive area to work and to help our students grow. And again, one other item too, for example, Team Pep, to see last week and again tomorrow night, on the parent night, to see the students and the parents and the staff members together there in a meeting such as that is fantastic. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. I know earlier on I had to share some of the heavy news and statistics and reports that I have to do as principal, but thank you for 2 weeks ago for helping me and supporting me going down to the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Administration Conference down in Atlantic City as well. So over those 2 days, I went to a number of workshops, and one of them talked about street data, it was called. And it was, you know, we have a lot of quantitative data about our students, but it's also looking for the qualitative data when you're out about in the street, if you would. And I talk about it all the time when I take laps here at school. Take a lap, clear your head, and get a vibe for how things are going. And like Bronwyn said earlier, there's a good vibe right now. And so thank you for supporting that. And I really appreciate it, and I hope to carry it the rest of the year. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments? I will open it up to board comments. I'd like to thank Mr. Brandt for your nice comments, and also say that we all appreciate everything that you and the rest of the staff do for the school. Does anybody have anybody have any comments?
I have a concern. Welcome back, Mr. Vargas. We have missed seeing you here. I respect your right to say what you would like to say. The only thing that concerns me is I think I did hear you say something about disagreement among the board about the Tanko statement. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is not to confirm or deny, but it concerns me greatly because the only place that discussion would take place is executive session. So I'm just wondering where you got that sense of disagreement, and I'm concerned about it.
I didn't say disagreement or, I said the letter did not convey what happened. It was purely my testimony.
Oh, okay. Maybe I mistook then. So if it's my mistake, I'll be happy to go back and look at it tonight and correct it.
But I have no knowledge.
Oh, good.
Just
Excellent.
that the letter itself, that the president just didn't convey the situation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I just, when I got home from workshop, I got home to my School Leader magazine, which is our perk for serving on the board. There was a good message. Dr. Timothy Purnell, he's the executive director of the NJSBA, and he opened the magazine with a message for nonpartisanship that I thought was really pertinent, especially given that it's almost November, and things always get a little crazy and heated. And the last paragraph that he wrote, he said, "When the votes are counted and the national drama fades into the background, let us redouble our focus on what truly matters. Let us work with unwavering dedication to govern our schools effectively, protect our students and staff, and remain steadfast in our commitment to the future. Our students are the common ground. Let's keep them at the heart of our efforts and rise above the fray of partisan politics." So I just wanted to share that from Dr. Purnell. I thought it was great.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I'd just like to echo that. I think that's a great point, Rebecca, and I think that applies to all of the students here, so thank you.
Okay, we will now be going into executive session to discuss HIB cases, litigation, personnel. We will not be taking action. We don't expect to take any action after executive session. Can I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or any opposed? Okay, thank you.